Hello and welcome. Tribunal nullifies election of Bayelsa State Governor Doye Diri, orders Independent National Electoral Commission to conduct a fresh election within 90 days, even as governor intends to appeal the verdict. Heated argument at House of Representatives public hearing on treaties, agreements and protocols between Minister of Transportation Rotimi Amechi and members of the committee over the federal government's plans to access some Chinese loans. Federal government announces resumption of international flights with effect from August 29th as all evacuation flights end on August 25th. And factory workers boo Belarus President Lukashenko as protests continue over his disputed re-election. Plus, we'll have business, sports, and later on news from our studios in London.
On business news tonight, Nigeria's headline inflation rises further to 12.82% in July, its highest rate since March 2018.
And on sports news tonight, Barcelona announced sacking of Piqué Setien as manager after Champions League humiliation.
Barely 6 months after the Apex Court confirmed him as governor of Bayelsa, the State Elections Petitions Tribunal today nullified the victory of Mr. Doye Diri and ordered the Independent National Electoral Commission to conduct a fresh poll within 90 days. Delivering the lead judgment of the three-member panel, Justice Yunusa Musa said INEC does not have the power to disqualify any candidates in an election.
It's the last sitting of the Bayelsa Governorship Election Tribunal, and 2 petitions are slated for judgment. First is the petition of the Advanced Nigeria Democratic Party, which was excluded from the election because the deputy governorship candidate did not meet the requirements for the election. For over 2 hours, the tribunal gives grounds for nullifying the election, insisting that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, lacks the power to disqualify any candidate in an election.
It is a clear exclusion, lawful exclusion. There is no two way to interpret it. We have documentary evidence. We warn them that please rescind your decision. And they went ahead and disqualified us and excluded us from the ballot paper. We have campaigned. We have done everything required in compliance with the Electoral Act. But illegality is not pleaded in law. That is what it is. So that is the position. We are going back to Bayelsa to conduct election.
In a dissenting judgment, the chairman of the tribunal, Justice Mohammed Sirajo, explains that the ANDP stands disqualified, having nominated a candidate that did not meet the requirements for the election.
Before you can talk about unlawful exclusion, there must have been valid nomination. This was a case of a political party that brought a candidate that was underage. That candidate, INEC pointed that out, and the candidate accepted, the party accepted and brought another candidate that was also underage, which was a deliberate attempt in order to create this situation of unlawful exclusion to come to court and begin to file petitions. And which is what we are saying the court should discourage.
The second petition is from the Accord Party, which alleged that the deputy governor of Bayelsa State forged his National Youth Service Corps certificate. In a unanimous judgment, the tribunal dismissed the petition for lacking in merit.
Meanwhile, Governor Doye Diri will be appealing the verdict of the Election Petitions Tribunal that nullified his election as governor of Bayelsa State. The governor said this when he received members of the Bayelsa State House of Assembly who paid him a solidarity visit at the government house in Yenagoa, the state capital. Meanwhile, mixed reactions trailed the tribunal's ruling as some residents of the state took to the streets to express their joy.
The cancellation of the election of Governor Doye Diri is being received with mixed feelings in Bayelsa State. At the government house in Yenagoa, members of the Bayelsa State House of Assembly are on a solidarity visit to the governor.
We respect the law. It's a process. his process. He has continued to proceed to the appeal court. So he still remains the governor of the state.
The governor has not been removed. It's court of first instance, and so there is room for appeal.
A confident Governor Diri calls for calm in the state.
Nobody has removed the governor. This is a court of first instance, and we respect the judiciary. The judiciary is there for the common man, and we believe that justice will be done. And even in this judgment, it is not a unanimous judgment.
Meanwhile, there is jubilation by members of the All Progressive Congress who felt hard done by when the candidate was disqualified over his name.
The man we all voted for, David Lyon, is a man for the people. This cancellation of the entire process will prove a point to those 5 justices that what they did was actually wrong.
This latest turn of events has no doubt put everyone on their toes, with all parties most likely going back to their drawing boards to map out new strategies.
A heated argument ensued today at the hearing of the House of Representatives Committee on Treaties, Agreements and Protocols between the chairman of the committee, Nicholas Osai, and the Minister of Transportation. The committee is investigating the $500 billion loan agreement between Nigeria and China for the federal government's railway projects. Mr. Rotimi Amechi insists that the activities of the lawmakers might prevent Nigeria from securing the loans for the projects. Our correspondent Terry Ikumi reports.
The House of Representatives Committee on Treaties, Agreements and Protocols reconvenes after a 3-week break for an investigative hearing into Nigeria's loan agreements. Government agencies and ministers have been invited, including the Minister of Transportation, who at the last hearing pleaded with the committee to halt its investigation in order not to scare the Chinese government away from giving the loan. As the hearing proceeds, a heated argument ensues between the Minister of Transportation and the committee chairman on an alleged $33 billion contract.
Can you provide this honorable committee with satisfied copies of labor plan, training programs carried out, and beneficiaries, and evidence of number of Nigerians working in all aspects of this project vis-a-vis their Chinese counterpart as provided in that agreement document?
The only contract we've awarded so far is $1.6 billion contract for Lagos Ibadan, which is under threat. Can
you speak to the questions I asked you now? You see, I told you from the beginning.
I have a choice.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir.
I have 2 choices.
Please.
You gotta let me speak, or I stop.
Excuse me. I said when you ask question with time, you answer the question directly.
The minister is also unable to give the exact number of Nigerians working on the rail project.
Mr. Chairman, there are over 20,000 workers. Only 560 of them are Chinese. 560, and I wish to submit the document.
Can we have the document?
Because we need to begin to say the truth to Nigerians.
Can we have the document?
Mr. Chairman, I beg to submit the document. Don't worry, I know the House will raise them.
I know when to raise that.
This goes on for a while and even extends to the committee when a member tries to make a contribution.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm only trying to guide you.
You can't guide me.
Mr. Chairman, with due respect, you do respect. Mr. Chairman, with due respect, I'm your senior in this parliament and I can guide you.
Okay. Honorable member, you are co-opted into this committee. You are co-opted into this committee.
Okay, thank you, my chairman.
I'm coming.
You have your way.
I'm in charge of this committee.
Thank you.
The minister insists that the investigation of the committee has a political undertone and points fingers directly at the chairman.
Because it's good to tell Nigerians the truth. This is very political.
Nobody is telling lies.
And I will show all the contracts awarded by the PDP government since you want to bring this up.
Mr. Chairman, sir.
It's important, I tell you, sir, that contract was signed as a prelude to a loan. And there is no loan. And we may not get the loan because of you, Mr. Chairman. Because of the committee you've set up against the China loan. South-South, that contract is from Lagos to Calabar, which is the whole of the South-South. Mr. Chairman, we may not get that loan, so there's no contract.
I am talking about the same contract you told me of this particular...
Which of them? The 2016 contract you talked about?
Yes, this one.
Which of them? If you're talking about the South-South, you just asked me. You want to meet the South-South contract?
Virtually all the contracts.
Do you want to meet the South-South contract? If you want to meet, say you want to meet it, let's go to the other one.
Can you listen to me? Follow me. If we continue to serve our geopolitical zone, this country will not be nice. If Zone 8 gets their fair share, and next year,
Have you not approached me on South-South? Have you not approached me on South-South Rail? Have you not approached me on South-South Rail?
I have not.
You have?
I have not.
Mr. Chairman, you have approached me.
It's okay.
As the minister's voice continues to raise, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, who appears visibly upset, storms the hearing and calls for a break.
Sorry, what's going on? Gentlemen, please, can we just take a break for about 10 to 15 minutes, please? Let's take a break for 10 to 15 minutes.
You can reach us in 10 minutes.
When the hearing resumes, the initially tensed atmosphere is doused and some calm is observed from both the committee chairman and the Minister of Transportation.
According to item B in
The committee chairman insists that in signing a loan agreement with the Chinese government, the Minister of Finance disobeyed a presidential directive, but the ministry insists that every loan agreement is approved by the president. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Let's take a look at some security matters now. More groups are lending their voices to calls for a lasting solution to the crisis in southern Kaduna. Today, Governor Nasir El-Rufai met with leadership of the Christian Association of Nigeria, security agencies and political leaders across the state towards achieving that objective. The CAN president, Reverend Samson Ayokunle, was categorical in his call for security agencies to unmask all those behind the killings and bring them to justice.
The search for peace in southern Kaduna continues, and in one of his numerous engagements, Governor Nasir El-Rufai is meeting with the leadership of the Christian Association of Nigeria, security agencies, and political leaders in the state. The CAN president admits that though the southern Kaduna crisis predates the present administration in the state, he however appeals to the government and security agencies to fish out the perpetrators of the killings and bring them to justice.
You will agree with me, Your Excellency, that one of the main responsibilities of leadership is problem solving. If such people had been brought to book before, the proportion was a far cry from the frequency of attacks and killings. The people causing trouble are not spirits, so it should not be too difficult to apprehend them and bring them to book.
Governor El-Rufai, who has repeatedly condemned the attacks, says his administration is committed to stopping the cycle of attacks and reprisals.
The ultimate guarantee of peace is the willingness of communities to live in harmony and their resolve to settle differences through lawful means. As government, is to uphold a common citizenship, united in respect for the rule of law, equality of opportunity, and promotion of the rights and liberties of everyone. We cannot allow our common humanity to be relegated and distorted by the obsession some of our compatriots have with identity politics, which tend to divide rather than unite us.
Beyond boots on the ground, military bases and police stations, some political leaders here note that the ultimate guarantee of peace is the willingness of communities to live in harmony and their resolve to settle differences through lawful means.
This crisis is 40 years old, and of course we have been trying to find solutions. We are working closely with both the communities, the religious leaders, the community leaders, youth leaders, women leaders, to find a lasting solution to the problem.
As much as possible and as quickly as possible, the warring communities should sit down and agree to take off military boots from the area, because there will be no investment, there will be no investor will be interested in an area that is characterized by military boots on ground.
At the end of this meeting, the consensus by all present is that continuous efforts needs to be made by political, religious and community leaders at all levels to help bring the situation under control.
In part two, after the break, federal government announces resumption of international flights with effect from August the 29th as all evacuation flights end August 25th. That's in a moment. Do join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Tribunal nullifies election of Bayelsa State Governor Doye Diri, orders Independent National Electoral Commission to conduct a fresh election within 90 days, even as governor intends to appeal the verdict. Heated argument at House of Representatives public hearing on treaties, agreements and protocols between Minister of Transportation Rotimi Amechi and members of the committee over the federal government's plan to access some Chinese loans. Federal government announces resumption of international flights with effect from August the 29th, as all evacuation flights end August the 25th. And factory workers boo Belarus President Lukashenko as protests continue over his disputed re-election. Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Do subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android, Fire TV and Roku as well. A former deputy governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Obadiah Melafia, today visited the office of the Department of State Services in Jos Plateau State for the second time in a week. Mr. Melafia was a guest of the service last Wednesday, where he was questioned for 6 hours following his allegation on a radio station that a northern governor is the leader of Boko Haram. He was accompanied today by his lawyer to the office of the DSS, where this time around he was interrogated for 50 minutes. Some cheery news now for air travelers coming from the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, lifting the ban on international flights, which will now resume on August the 29th this year. The Minister of Aviation, Hardy Sirika, made the announcement during the daily briefing by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 in Abuja. He said only the international airports in Abuja and Lagos will be allowed to operate for now.
It's a bi-weekly news conference of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 in Abuja, as the Minister of Aviation announces the commencement of international flights.
International flights will resume from the 29th of August 2020. It will start just like we did with the domestic. It will start with Lagos and Abuja. So what would happen is that very close to your departure date, as much as close to your departure date, you will take a test, COVID test, where you're coming from. There will also be a portal that will be open. Prior to your departure, you will pay through that platform. You pay through that platform for a test to be done here in Nigeria day 8 after your arrival.
The task force chairman speaks on the level of compliance with the safety protocols as WAEC candidates begin the examination, just as he announces the termination of all evacuation flights.
We wish to state that all evacuation flights will end by the 25th August 2020, after which airports will be given sufficient time to prepare for reopening.
The daily cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria has continued to reduce in the last few days. However, the Ministry of Health once again is misinterpreting the low cases to mean that the battle is being won, just as the Nigeria Center for Disease Control emphasizes the need for more testing.
The low figures we're observing, by the time the spread of sample collection sites and diagnostics goes into all local government areas, and we're able to collect samples and test, then we shall know whether the it's a standard phenomenon or whether it is just temporary. So the verification and validation, let me call it validation, will need to be conducted before we can begin to say, yes, it is leveling out.
We also need all Nigerians to take responsibility and play their part. And that means if you develop any of these symptoms, or even mild symptom, weakness, tiredness, get tested, please.
Nigeria has recorded over 49,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 from the over 352,600 samples collected so far.
The registrar of the West Africa Examination Council has given Nigerians the assurance that the exams will be a huge success despite the COVID-19 pandemic. He was speaking today in Lagos while carrying out an on-the-spot assessment of the 2020 WAEC exams, which started today. Our correspondent Gimba Umar reports.
The stakes in the WAEC examinations are high. Students spend collectively thousands of hours each year in preparation. 4 months have passed. Nobody predicted that the greatest disruption in all will come from a virus. But that is slowly changing as the registrar of WAEC himself inspects the procedures and conduct of the students in Agidimbi Grammar School as well as the Millennium Grammar School in Ikeja as the examinations commence.
That's part of the challenge of COVID-19. They are making use of 23 classrooms. And you know it's not easy to go around 23 classrooms. But the good thing is that we have made adequate arrangement for this.
Still within Lagos, the principal of Agidimbi Grammar School in Lagos believes that the stakes are high, but even higher is the challenge the education system presents at this time.
We have our students in classes, a class that should have accommodated 60, we have only 20, in order to have the distancing.
Grammar school in Ogun State, like that in Lagos, saw an orderly conduct of COVID-19 protocol check. Temperatures reading and washing of hands are strictly observed before entry into the exam-filled hall. That is sure to test the efficacy of virtual learning on the COVID-19 conditions.
When the lockdown was lifted, we had a program on revision. We did that the week before the last and the last week.
Away from the West, Government Secondary School in Wuse, the heart of the FCT, witnessed social distancing in its finest. Washing of hands is integral to keep the virus at bay.
Government has provided in excess the face mask, the sanitizer, the wash hand stations, as you can see.
In Uyo, the Akwa Ibom State capital, the Nigerian Christian Institute, one of the centers for the WAEC exams, is no different. Social distancing is the order. A mild challenge was, however, encountered from the start.
Unfortunately, the government didn't give us much time to get them back into a mindset of being in school. But luckily, our children already were prepared, and so brushing them up, it has been stressful for them.
063. So are students in Yenagoa, the Bayelsa State capital, Central APA Secondary School, where question papers are distributed. The subject, mathematics, with deep concerns raised for this year's exams.
Government have done its best and want to commend them. They've done their part. I think it's left for the students to also do their part.
In the wake of the health crisis, education policymakers in West Africa may have to re-strategize to ensure that the standard of education at all levels doesn't drop. Gimba Umar, Channels Television News.
Now, the governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, has lifted the ban on markets, places of worship and select sporting centers in the state to accelerate economic activities. The markets are to resume from tomorrow, Tuesday, August the 18th, and operate between the hours of 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. daily, while churches are to open at 50% capacity Nightclubs, cinemas, bars and in-service restaurants remain banned. The governor, who made the announcement during a statewide broadcast in Port Harcourt, the state capital, however, warns that places that fail to adhere to COVID-19 protocols risk being closed down again.
All markets in the state, except Rumokoshi or Ibin and Ugudiba Transamari slaughter markets, should resume business activity from Tuesday, 18th August 2020, from 7 a.m. and close at 6 p.m. daily. All markets must function in strict compliance with established COVID-19 protocols and guidelines. This means that sellers, buyers, and visitors must all wear face masks and ensure that they wash their hands, use sanitizers, and maintain social distancing while transacting in the markets. Similarly, churches can now hold church services with 50% of their whole capacity, provided the leadership can enforce the wearing of face masks and washing of hands at the entrance by worshippers. Furthermore, the ban on outdoor sports activities by the Port Harcourt Club, the golf section of the Port Harcourt Club, and the Port Harcourt Polo Club is hereby lifted. However, these clubs must also comply with established COVID-19 protocols or risk another closure.
When the news at 10 returns, on a port in River State makes history as leading container terminal operator, West Africa Container Terminal receives largest container ship ever to berth at any Nigerian port. Do join us again. Welcome back to the news at 10. As at the last count, 208 of the 250 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Akwa Ibom State have been discharged, and that's according to the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. The management of BOA Group of Companies considers this an impressive feat and is complementing the efforts of the state government with the donation of 5 ambulances and 100,000 face masks. During the presentation, the Director of Government Affairs of the group, Dr. Aliyu Hong, praised the state's efforts so far in containing the pandemic.
We spoke with the Secretary to Government. We didn't know the magic the governor was doing, where the numbers are not really rising when this is a very large state that we are supposed to have seen figures going. Until we came here, we saw the railroad that you are already working ahead as if you have some premonition, something like that is going to happen, you prepared for it. His Excellency, the Chairman of BOA, saw that you have done well. He wants to also add small contributions to your effort. They have decided to donate 5 ambulance buses fully kitted, customized for this pandemic, and also 100,000 pieces of cotton-made face masks to be used by the population in the state toward containing and ameliorating the challenges of COVID-19. So far, Your Excellency, the Chairman of BOA has donated more than 7 billion naira to states at different levels, to local government organizations toward containing this pandemic.
Well, the state governor also commended the company for their support.
This is a clear demonstration of love. And we don't take things like this for granted. We want to thank the company for their kind words and appreciation of what we've done so far. And this goes a long way to demonstrate his interest in joining us to develop Akwa Ibom State. And he has been showing this. I know his interest. I know a lot of things that he's planning for us to work together. And I just pray that God will grant him more successes. Thank you for the 100,000 face masks you provided. So, as I just earlier said inside, we'll move this to schools so that we can share this to students that have resumed, the SSS 3 and the JS 3 students who have resumed.
to issues regarding election security. The former national chairman of the ruling All Progressives Congress, Adams Oshomale, has met with President Muhammadu Buhari at the presidential villa in Abuja. Mr. Oshomale, who arrived at the villa around 2:50 p.m., was ushered in to meet with the president behind closed doors. After the meeting, the former APC chairman told journalists that he discussed issues of election security in order to forestall incidents of violence.
So I shared this with Mr. President, and I said, all we just need is good security. If APC man commit an offense, arrest him. If a PDP man commit an offense, arrest him. Once it is not about sermon do not change the heart of the devil. What changed the heart of men is the fear of sanction. And once one person is arrested from APC, another person is arrested from PDP if they are found involved in unlawful possession of firearms and they misuse those firearms and they are arrested and prosecuted, the message is clear. Oh, Oshomale wants to take a comeback to become national chairman. For what? To go and do a receipt. So my attitude is not to reply to those. And that is coming from somebody who says he's an employee, an appointee of Progressive Governors Forum. It's just that the cowards that are using him are not able to come out. Otherwise, you should ask this guy, who is now election expert. He contested for Senate against McCarthy. He lost deposit. He even contested against Governor Rufai for primaries. And he lost deposit before Fayemi unilaterally appointed him as a DG. So if he's now the spokesman abusing me and all of that, you want to drag me to his level? No. A gentleman does not wrestle with a pig.
To the campaign trail in Edo State, where the APC is refuting claims made by the People's Democratic Party that it's printing voters' cards to be used during the upcoming Edo State governorship elections. The APC publicity secretary in the state told Channels Television today that the PDP should be blamed for trying to circumvent the electoral process.
Sights and sounds of the APC rallies across the 3 senatorial districts of the state for the Edo governorship election. It's a season of accusation and counter-accusations as the September the 19th Edo governorship election looms. The APC totally dismisses allegations by the PDP that it's printing voter cards to be used during the polls.
So it doesn't really make sense for us in the APC to waste money, waste resources, waste time to go and start printing cards that nobody can use. It doesn't make sense. But what has become apparent is that we now have we have intelligence reports that PDP is actually printing cards. So what they are trying to do now is fly a kite, plant a decoy, so that anybody that is caught eventually with fake cards, they can say, oh, remember we warned the public that APC was printing cards.
The back and forth salvos come in the wake of relentless campaigns cutting through Edo State. The APC believes there are gains to their pains.
The reaction, the reception was overwhelming. It was heartwarming. POI, that's Pastor Sage Izeyamu, the flag bearer of the APC for the governorship election, has become a mass movement. We have grassroots appeal. Because of the COVID-19 protocols, we try to keep the crowd as small as possible. But people just wouldn't stay away, in spite of our admonitions, in spite of our appeals, and everything we said to say, look, we are just meeting a few representatives in each local government. They just couldn't stay away. You saw the crowd. It was huge. It was massive.
The APC is, however, upbeat, but it's on the right path to victory, no matter what controversy rears its head in the build-up to the polls.
And as the PDP's campaign trail gathers momentum ahead of the Edo governorship election, the party entered the Central Senatorial District less than 24 hours after concluding the tour of Edo North. The state governor, Godwin Obaseki, who addressed supporters in his southeast local government area, said the PDP has the right plans to make Edo great again.
The coastal town Ilushi is the first destination for the PDP campaign trail in Esan land. The first task is to seek royal blessings and support from the traditional rulers as a prerequisite for the electioneering proper. This is granted.
Our prayer is by September 19th, Your Excellencies will return to the government house.
Ward 9 is the first campaign ground. Ifweku and Ilushi Islands combined to give the visitors a befitting reception. According to the campaign, past election results confirm Edo Central as a political stronghold of the PDP. The state chairman of the party, Mr. Anthony Iziegbeni, says the many years of loyalty are about to be rewarded.
With the owner, big time. As I talk to you, so the man when we bring up governor today, that the man when will solve some of those problems we will get for Ilushi.
Governor Obaseki believes the present challenges are the legacy of the immediate past administration.
Today, no road to Ilushi. See the River Niger, you don't need to take all of Ilushi go. I hear say light never day here for 5 years. Una know why? Because of godfatherism in Nigeria. Now we not get light. So this is our government. When PDP they bring come, we not go promise everything at one time because we know they lie. But we go do the ones when they're most important to now.
Campaigning from ward to ward can be a tedious task, but the PDP insists that this is the best way to provide good governance, getting first-hand information on the issues facing the people and also addressing them.
History has been made at the Onne port in Rivers State as leading container terminal operator. The West Africa Container Terminal received the largest container ship ever to berth at any Nigerian port. The huge ship, named Maersk Stadelhorn, with a length of about 300 meters and a beam of 48.2 meters, has the capacity to carry about 10,000 units of containers.
History is being made at the Onne port in Rivers State as leading container terminal operator. The West Africa Container Terminal received the largest container ship ever to berth at any Nigerian port. The huge ship, named Maersk Stadelhorn, with a length overall of about 300 meters and beam of 48.2 meters, has capacity to carry out 10,020 equivalent units of containers. Chairman of the board of WAEC, Mr. Klaus Lawson, says with this achievement, the terminal has become the gateway to eastern Nigeria, while the port operators speak on the significance of the new arrival.
There is a lot of cargo that comes into Nigeria that can choose to go either to Lagos or to Onne. So having better opportunities to connecting Onne to the world definitely gives importers and exporters opportunities that they didn't have before.
And Onne port has been identified as the most viable alternative to Lagos. So the dredging of the channel has been done to about 12 meters, which makes it possible for us to receive this kind of vessels. And the container terminal itself have the facilities to handle gearless vessels. So it is a collective effort, and we are good to go.
The commercial manager of WAEC, Noah Sharif, believes the regular berthing of large vessels will boost trade in the country.
WAEC is one of the facilities that have zero waiting time in Nigeria, and with this size of vessel, our goal is to turn it around and ensure that our customers are picking up the cargo in time.
We also have the safest terminal in Nigeria, so any truck that is coming in for a container, anybody that is coming here to work feels very safe.
According to WAEC, the sum of $14 million has been invested in the acquisition of sophisticated modern cargo handling equipment. In 2020, the company announced a further investment in its Phase 2 upgrade to include the acquisition of 3 additional mobile harbor cranes, 20 rubber tire gantry cranes, 3 reach stackers, 13 terminal trucks and trailers, and an empty container handler.
For the rest of the business news, here's Anne Waudu.
Ijoma. Welcome to Business News. Let's begin with Nigeria's inflation rate, which has continued its upward trajectory at 12.82% in the month of July. And that's its highest in more than 2 years. According to latest data from the National Bureau of Statistics, the rise in inflation is due to pressure in prices of basic food commodities as well as healthcare resources. The Ghanaian government has commissioned and handed over the headquarters of the African Continental Free Trade Area to the African Union Commission. And this comes after the country was selected ahead of 6 other countries in 2019 to host the AFCFTA Secretariat based on regional balance formula, making it responsible for overseeing implementation of the agreement. The AFCFTA provides an opportunity for Africa to create the world's largest free trade area, but uniting 1.3 billion people in a $2.5 trillion economic bloc and ushering a new era of development. The first commercial deal is expected to take place on January the 1st next year after disruptions caused by COVID-19 forced a delay of the implementation of that agreement initially set for July the 1st this year. Now let's head to the local market where about 35 billion naira has been chopped off from the total value of equities listed today as the NSE closed Monday's trading session with a hangover of profit-taking recorded on Friday. Well, let's hear more from Temple Ashadri.
Thank you for joining us again on the Stock Market Report. The equities market opens the week on a slow start despite strong buy sentiment across fundamentally sound stocks like MTN Nigeria and Unilever PLC. But riding on the back of losses in Dangote Cement and of course GT Bank, the overall market performance fell today by 0.27%. And if we look further at the activity level, it's a reduction in the number of shares traded in volume and of course in value compared to the transaction that we did last Friday. But due to the sell-off on Dangote Cement, the industrial goods sector lost the most, leaving the insurance end with the opportunity to record the highest gains on the sectoral front. Now, following the increase in Unilever overseas stake in the Nigerian listed entity, investors' sentiment towards that stock improved today, earning it the top spot on the gainers chart, while Livestock PLC lost the most during the session. And that's your stock market report. I'm Temple Ashaju.
And that's business news for tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. The rest of the news at 10 continues with Ijoma.
Thanks a lot, Anne. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko faces more calls to step down as protests continue in the capital Minsk ahead of his disputed re-election. Mr. Lukashenko was heckled by workers during a visit to a factory where he had hoped to gain some support, but was booed amid chants for him to leave. The protests are said to be spreading to more cities. And here's Simon Pusey with more and Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The Belarusian opposition has called for a general strike after tens of thousands of protesters gathered in the capital Minsk for the biggest rally in the country's recent history. The opposition's call for a strike follows industrial action on Friday by thousands of workers at state-controlled factories, a traditional support base for the incumbent president, Alexander Lukashenko. In a statement, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, the Belarusian opposition leader in exile in Lithuania, said she was ready to become the country's national leader, claiming victory in last week's presidential election and calling on police to come over to the side of the people. International pressure has also grown on Lukashenko over the torture of protesters in jails and over allegations of vote rigging in the elections, in which he claimed a landslide victory with 80% of the vote. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has announced the country is to delay its general election by a month due to the outbreak of COVID-19 in Auckland.
I've also been advised that a moving to a 7...
Calls have been growing for the election to be moved, with opposition leaders saying it wasn't just and fair to hold an election while an outbreak was underway. New Zealand is in the midst of its first outbreak since eliminating the disease in June. US Congress Speaker Nancy Pelosi is recalling the House of Representatives early from its summer recess in a bid to protect the US Postal Service.
At a time of a pandemic, you would think they'd have a little sensitivity.
The Speaker said late on Sunday that Donald Trump was trying to sabotage the election by trying to block funding to the Postal Service and suppress mail-in voting in November's election. Several states were also considering taking legal action to stop the service being run down to a level where it cannot deliver enough mail in ballots in November, when almost half the country is expected to vote by post because of the coronavirus pandemic. More than 10,000 protesters in Thailand chanting "Down with dictatorship and the country belongs to the people" have rallied in Bangkok in what is by far the biggest anti-government demonstration since the coup in 2014. The protests were led mainly by students calling for a curb on the monarchy's powers, as well as demands for the departure of the Prime Minister Prayuth Chan-o-cha, a new constitution and an end to harassment of opposition activists. Anger has been fueled by accusations of corruption, the arrest of some student leaders over earlier protests, and the economic fallout from the coronavirus pandemic. International experts and thousands of local volunteers are making frantic efforts to protect Mauritius's beaches and its wildlife from the oil spill by the Japanese tanker which broke in half on Saturday. Mauritian authorities say poor sea conditions make the removal of the remaining oil on the ship risky, prompting concerns over an ecological disaster. Between 800 and 1,200 tons is thought to have leaked into the sea already. Scientists say the full impact of the spill is still unclear, but the oil has already reached exceptional zones of marine life, sparking concern over the long-term damage to the environment. At least 16 people have been killed in an attack by the Islamist group Al-Shabaab on a seaside hotel in Somalia's capital Mogadishu. The Islamist group, with links to Al-Qaeda, stormed the high-end elite hotel, detonating a car bomb and then opening fire with assault rifles. At least 43 people have been reportedly injured in the attack. Clashes have broken out in Mexico's capital, Mexico City, as hundreds of people took to the streets to protest against violence towards women. People are demanding authorities do more to stop the endemic number of female homicides. The clashes started when demonstrators smashed through security barriers erected around the city's monuments, causing damage to landmarks and statues. An average of 10 women a day are killed in Mexico, with an increase of 10% in 2019 compared to the year before. And finally, to the story of a miraculous rescue in India, where monsoon rains have caused widespread flooding. Look closely here and you can see a man clinging to a small tree as perilously strong waters flow past him. Crowds watched on nervously as an Indian Air Force rescue helicopter hovers above. After several failed attempts due to strong winds, the man was eventually rescued, having been stranded for almost an entire day. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Thank you, Simon. Let's take some sports. Here's Olumide Macaulay.
Thank you, Ijoma. Hello and welcome to Sports News. We begin with football. Former Super Eagles captain Mikel Obi has joined English Championship side Stoke City. Stoke City confirmed that Mikel is the 4th signing of the club this summer. The 33-year-old former Chelsea midfielder joins Morgan Fox, James Chester and Stephen Fletcher in joining the Potters ahead of the 2020-2021 Championship season. He returns to English football after a spell in the Turkish Super League with Trabzonspor. Inter Milan will face Sevilla in the final of this season's Europa League after defeating Ukraine's Shakhtar Donetsk 5-0. A brace each from Romelu Lukaku and Lautaro Martinez, plus a goal from defender Danilo D'Ambrosio, helped Antonio Conte's men to a flawless victory over Shakhtar in a one-sided semi-final in Dusseldorf. Having missed out on the Serie A title by a single point, Inter now have the chance to claim a first trophy since 2011 when they faced Julian Lopetegui's Sevilla on Friday. Catalan giants Barcelona have sacked coach Quique Setién 3 days after the Spanish side were hammered 8-2 by Bayern Munich in the Champions League quarterfinals. He was appointed in January after the club sacked two-time league winner Ernesto Valverde, despite his side sitting top of La Liga standings on goal difference. But after Barcelona were condemned to their heaviest defeat in European competition on Friday, Setién was also sacked after only 7 months in charge. Barca finished second behind Real Madrid in the recent La Liga campaign. Meanwhile, reports in Spain and the Netherlands suggest Ronald Koeman is now the top candidate for Barcelona, who are looking to change things after being humiliated by Bayern in the Champions League. Koeman, who is a Barcelona legend, currently handles the Netherlands national team and is seen by many as favorite to succeed Quique, who was sacked today. Koeman, Mauricio Pochettino and Xavi Hernandez were reportedly approached by Barcelona when they sacked Ernesto Valverde in January, but at the time, all three men declined the offer. That's it on Sports News. Ijoma, back to you.
Thanks, Olumide. And the main news again. The Bayelsa State Governorship Election Petitions Tribunal today nullified the election of Governor Doye Diri and ordered the Independent National Electoral Commission to conduct a fresh election within 90 days. Governor Diri said he intends to appeal the verdict. Also today, a heated argument ensued at the House of Representatives' public hearing on treaties, agreements and protocols between the Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi, and members of the committee over the federal government's plans to access some Chinese loans. And that's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for staying with us. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Good night.